today got a little bit of a change of scenery because, for one, I'm going to be talking about a little bit of a follow-up on my social media cleanse, and also I'm going to be making banana bread. We'll see how this goes because that one just fell off. Really good at focusing on multiple things at once, and I definitely won't get distracted, and I definitely won't forget anything important. So first things first, we are peeling the bananas so that I can mash them before I put them in the bread. So the thing about my social media cleanse, which was like the first thing I talked about on this channel that I'm finally following up on like 3 weeks later, is that it didn't really work as defined by the goals that I had when I set out on it. In that I did not set tight enough boundaries for myself. So what that led to was me spending time on social media on the computer, which technically got around the rules of not being on my phone as much, but did not ultimately attack the root problem of that bowl is way too small. This bowl is way too small. Never mind. Second bowl. I'm good at planning ahead. So I was spending time on social media still, which was kind of the whole idea of the cleanse, getting away from that. So that wasn't great. The other thing is, I think the other root cause was I did not have a good enough replacement activity. The biggest issue there is that as many barriers as you put up and as much friction as you add for an interaction, it doesn't really matter as long as there's not a good enough alternative to look to change to do instead, essentially. And I would get to this point where I was sitting on Twitter or whatever social media, mashed bananas, and I would be like, God, I really shouldn't be doing this. But like, what else am I gonna do? Which really, not good, not great. So the other issue here, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And not in the fun or lighthearted way where it's like, oh, I just gotta make everything really good and it's so fun. No, it's in the way that if I try to do something and I'm not good enough the first try, I just won't do it ever again because what the fuck am I doing, you know? That meant that if I had an alternative that wasn't perfect, then I just would not choose to do it, which is not good because really the be all end all was being off social media, not being perfect at doing this other thing. I'm melting butter, by the way, so I can put it in the bread. And I am just going to double check that it is 1/3 cup, and that is 1/3 cup. Okay, beautiful. I then started the recipe for about 30 seconds, slowly realizing that I had, in fact, done something wrong. So you know what I did? You know what's really, really cool that I did? I melted the butter. I needed to soften it, not melt it. I think what this means is I'm just gonna have some butter that's gonna be melted, and that's okay. I will use that at some point. I knew I would mess something up. So there wasn't really like a defined end point for when I was on this cleanse. It just kind of ended, not with a bang, but with a whimper, which is not ideal, obviously. So because it didn't end like super definitively, it's taken me a minute to like actually come up with any conclusions from it. But now I have, and I'm gonna have some new boundaries, some new systems, some new ideas in place to help accomplish the goals and come away with something from this. So, first big thing is no Twitter on the computer. As I hope I mentioned, having Twitter on the computer was a huge workaround that was very accessible to me. that technically was within the letter of the law. Twitter is back on my phone, which is somewhat paradoxical, but in my mind, it's a little bit like how prohibition of alcohol gave the mafia such an easy vector of power and money, because everyone wanted alcohol. So whoever had it, the mafia, had this extra power. Not the best metaphor in the world, but it works. So it is now like fully integrated with the systems that I have had in place and that I will continue to have in place, because it's a lot harder to regulate things on the computer. So in addition to having Twitter back on my phone so I can regulate it better, I have added another app alongside Opal to help keep my screen time down. And that is OneSec, which is this little thing that just makes you take a second when you open up an app, or multiple apps if you have premium, just so that you don't get that instant dopamine hit of opening Twitter and seeing a funny shit poster or a piece of news or what have you. So, side note, I kind of hate it when like productivity or life improvement apps have like key features that are just locked behind a paywall. Because like I feel like if you really believe in this product and in, you know, getting people off their phones and improving the lives of so many people, you should do it not behind a paywall. And okay, I understand that people need to make money and that like developing apps can be a good source of income, but it just frustrates me, and maybe I don't like living under capitalism where so many things are driven by a profit motive and not a motive of like making life better for people. And that's a whole thing that I don't have time to get into right now, because I've already been talking for way too long and not gotten to nearly as many points as I was hoping to. So the third thing that I have changed or added is the Focus Friend by Hank Green and some other folks. What that is just a little guy who, when you enter like a focus session, he makes as many socks as there are minutes in that session. And so with those socks, you can like buy little decorations and stuff. And it's really cute and it's really fun. And it's nice to have like a little bit of positive feedback for a productivity session that's not just the thing you were being productive on, because it's an extra added layer of reinforcement. So yes, I'm a little bit Pavloving myself into being productive, but like, who cares? As long as it gets done, that's what matters. But yeah, I don't want to disappoint my little guy. And side note, I did name my little guy Mr. Soup after Mr. Soup from Worlds Beyond Number. And by the way, go listen to Worlds Beyond Number if you like D&D at all or like fantasy at all, because it is amazing. It is just, the stories are so well thought out. And God, it's so incredible. Brennan Lee Mulligan is a fucking wizard. So the fourth thing is remembering that I have hobbies, hence making banana bread, because there are things that I genuinely enjoy doing, and that really helps not feel so like, oh, I have to do it perfectly, otherwise it doesn't matter. And, you know, doing this YouTube stuff kind of helps with that as well, because like that's something that I have no fucking standards for. Well, I have some standards for it. I don't have no standards for it. It just helps me to do something and get it done and have it be like a fully completed task, so that I'm not just sitting there like, God, I haven't done anything. Even if it is like a later in the day thing, it still helps. In the end, really, any change you make in your life, or any change ever, it has to be like a positive thing. It can't just be like, oh, I'm not doing this, you know? Even in just like a purely mechanical sense, if you stop doing something, you have to have something else to replace that time with. And it helps to have something positive to replace it with, something that you can look at you know, either when you're doing it or after you've done it, and be like, wow, that was actually really cool. I'm glad I did that. So like, we'll see how this works, but ultimately, to be different, you have to choose to be so, you know? So, in other news, I went on a little camping trip this weekend, and I'm not saying I heard Bigfoot, but like, I maybe might have heard Bigfoot, because I heard this like really defined, really loud, like, whoop noise. It was longer, like a longer lead up and longer run up than that, but that was sort of the tone and timbre of it. And I've looked up a bunch of different bird sounds, and I couldn't find any that sounded remotely like it, except like this one sound of like a male wood duck. Even that though was not quite what we're looking for here. So, you know, a little bit weird, but you know, other than that, it was a really fun camping trip, or backpacking trip really. And I want to go on more of those because backpacking is really cool, and I like being in nature. I don't like hearing mysterious sounds in the woods, but you know, it's kind of fun. And everyone that I've talked to about is like, hey, maybe it was Bigfoot. And like, I'm not a Bigfoot believer or anything, but it is kind of a funny idea that like I heard Bigfoot in the woods. And the other thing is like, I have to go back to school soon, which is scary because that's my last semester ever, unless I go to grad school, which I don't think is gonna happen, but still, what the fuck? What do you mean I'm almost done with college? What? What do you mean 2020 was 5 years ago? Shut the fuck up. So, the other thing about banana bread is you don't slam it to get it set and ready to go in the oven, because that just gets rid of all the air in it, and it's terrible. So that's in the oven for 55 minutes. So that's that for now. Goodbye forever. Actually, I lied. It's finished now and it smells really good. So that's the end of the video. Bye.